Welcome! You know how sometimes one thing leads to another, creating a sort of chain reaction? Well, in math, we've got a really cool tool for that exact situation. It's called function composition, and today we're going to build it from the ground up. So, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the basics you already know. Then we'll introduce the main event, function composition. After that, we'll get some hands-on practice evaluating them, figure out the safety rules by finding the domain, and finally, we'll learn how to take them apart to see what makes them tick. Let's dive in.
All right, before we jump into the new stuff, let's do a quick refresh on the tools you probably already have in your math toolkit for combining functions.
I'm sure this is something you've seen before, right? Just like you can add or subtract numbers, you can do the exact same thing with functions. You can take two of them and combine them with those basic operations to create a brand new function.
The main thing to notice here is the notation. When you see something like f plus g x parenthesis, it's just a neat shorthand way of writing f of x plus g of x. It's our foundation. But now we're ready for something a little different.
Okay, so adding and subtracting is one thing, but what if you need to do something in a sequence? What if the output of one function needs to become the input for the next one? Well, that's exactly where function composition comes into play.
Here's a real-world example. The day of the year affects the average temperature, and the temperature, in turn, affects your heating cost. You see that chain? Day leads to temperature, which leads to cost. That chain of events is the core idea of function composition.
And this is what we call it. That little open circle notation is read as f composed with g at x. But what it actually means is what you see on the right, f of g of x. You are literally taking the entire g function and plugging it right inside the f function.
Okay, if there's one thing to remember today, it's this. Always, always work from the inside out. Just look at the formula. G of x is physically inside the parentheses for f. That's your visual clue right there. Solve the inner function first, get a result, and then that result becomes the brand new input for the outer function.
Now, this is a super common trip-up, so let's be really clear. Composition is not the same as multiplication. As this example shows, plugging one function inside another gives a totally different result than just multiplying them together. It's a chain reaction, not a product. Okay, that's enough of the theory. Let's actually put this stuff into practice. We're going to see how this works with functions given to us in tables, on graphs, the whole shebang. So on this slide, we've got two functions, f and g, laid out in a simple table. For any given x, we can just look up the output for f of x and g of x. All right, time for a quick check-in. Using that inside-out rule we just talked about and the data in this table, can you figure out the value of f of g at 1? Go on, hit pause, and give it a shot. Okay, let's walk through it. First up, the inside part, g of 1. We go to our table, find x equals 1, look across to the g of x column, and boom, it's 3. Now that output of 3 becomes our new input for f, so we're looking for f of 3. Back to the table we go, find x equals 3, look at the f of x column, and there's our final answer, 3.
Awesome. Now, what if we don't have a table? What if we have graphs instead? Well, the great news is the process is exactly the same. We're still working inside out, just reading our values off the axes.
Okay, your turn. But watch out, I switched the order on you this time. We're looking for g of f of 2. Use the graphs, work from the inside out. Pause here and see what you come up with. All right, let's trace it. We start inside with f of 2. So we find 2 on the x-axis for the f graph, go up to the line, and then over to the y-axis. That gives us 1. Great. Now that 1 is our new input for g. So we move over to the g graph, find 1 on the x-axis, go up, and our final output is 3. See how that works? So we're getting pretty good at using this new tool, but like any powerful tool, there are some safety rules. We have to talk about the domain. Basically, what inputs are we even allowed to use in the first place?
I like to think of it like this. An input value has to survive a two-part journey. First, checkpoint 1. X has to be a legal input for the inner function g. If it passes, great. Then comes checkpoint 2. The output from g has to be a legal input for the outer function f. If it fails at either of those points, it's out. It's not in the domain.
Let's make this real with the example on the slide. Okay, step 1, we look at the inner function, g of x. We know we can't divide by 0, right? So 3x minus 2 can't be 0. That means x cannot be 2/3. That's our first banned number. Now, step 2, we look at the outer function, f of x. Its input can't be 1, but what is its input?
It's the entire output of g of x. So in step 3, we have to figure out which x value would cause g of x to equal 1 because that value is also forbidden. We solve that equation and find that x equals 2 is the culprit. So putting it all together, our final domain is all real numbers except for 2/3 and 2.
All right, for our last section, we're going to flip things around. Instead of building a function, we're going to play detective and take one apart to see its simpler components. This is called decomposing a function.
And you might be thinking, okay, why do we need to do this? But trust me, this is an absolutely crucial skill for what comes next in math, especially in calculus. Being able to see the simple parts inside a complicated function is a total game changer.
So look at this function here. Can you see the 2 steps? Think about the order of operations. What's the inside calculation you do first, and what's the outside operation you do to that result?
So if we look at what's physically inside the square root symbol, we see 5 minus x squared. That's a perfect candidate for our inner function. Let's call it h of x. Now, what are we doing to that whole chunk? We're taking its square root. So our outer function, g of x, is just the square root function. And we can even check it to make sure we're right. If you plug h of x into g of x, you get our original function right back. Perfect.
And that really brings us full circle. The true power of function composition is that it models so many things in the real world. Any process that happens in sequential steps. Converting money from one currency to another, and then to a third, that's a composite function. A factory assembly line, where one station's output is the next one's input, that's a composite function. Now that you know the pattern, I bet you're going to start seeing these function chains all over the place.